Hello, my name is Arthur, and in the last video we left off finishing up this isometric tile map with the idea that we could come back and make some stone wall to go on top of this ground. And I suggested we could shoot something a little more photorealistic. Instead of going out and taking a photo, I've just shopped online for one. It's listed as a public domain picture. My usage is not commercial anyways, it's just educational, so this should be a fine image to use. The problem with the image is it is 1920 by 1280 and the resolution is just too big, so I don't want to just save this file. What I want to do is to screen capture it, because this resolution displayed here is more suitable for the project. So we're going to use GIMP to do that. We'll go create, and we'll create from a screenshot. We'll select a region to grab. I've put in a timer here because that seems to work best for me. So we'll grab that, and that'll appear up in GIMP. There it is. Close that down, and that looks good. So we're going to need to open up one of the floor tiles or the ground tiles. So we'll get the blank ground tile, zoom in, image, canvas size. We're going to add 128 pixels to the height. We'll resize that. First off, we have to do the offset because the tile needs to be pulled directly to the bottom with an offset of 128. We have transparency, so we'll resize. We'll need the grid, show grid, snap to grid. Configure the grid for 8 pixel squares. Then we need to crop the image so that the ground is at the bottom of the image, because this is excess and we don't want it there. What we'll result with is an image that's 256 by 256. And what we're creating here is just a reference image. So we'll go image, crop to selection. That all looks good. So that's our reference image to help us to get the floor onto the ground. So now we're going to add a new layer filled with transparency. That's the layer we'll be working in. We'll use free select, and we're going to outline the profile of the wall we're going to build. So I'm going to make it 1, 2, 3, 4 grid spaces tall. Go over to up 1 for the pitch, and come back down to this side, 1, 2, 3, 4 tall. Close that up, and we're just going to fill it with that stone pattern. That's so when we copy and paste the stone image here, we don't end up with 1 pixel errors of transparency in our stone wall image. So we're also going to configure the grid here, show grid, snap to grid. But unlike other grids in the project, it doesn't have to be 8 or 16 or 32. We're going to try around 30 and see how that works. That looks okay. And this is a little experimental, so I don't have everything worked out on it perfect exactly or anything. So we're going to select, and I'm just taking guesstimates here on sizes for things. So it's kind of a best guess situation. I'm going to select this region. It's about the shape of the wall we're filling in, so we'll copy it and paste it. It'll probably be fairly large. Now in tools, transform tools, perspective is the tool we're going to use. That allows us to move each corner of that image to where we want it. So we'll move that to the proper locations for the wall. There'll be a butt end and a top edge of the wall remaining. That's 2 grid spaces wide. And if you want to make the wall thinner, you have to double the resolution of the grid to be able to do that, because of the pitch of the edges is always 2 over 1 up. So this is 2 over 1 up for the pitch of the edge. As you work with it, you'll see how that works out. That's just the math for a 2-to-1 tile. So we'll transform that. We'll do the shading. So the shading on that side was -30. We'll commit that. We'll come back here, get our rectangle select tool, and we're just going to invert that to 1 grid above the previous selection. We'll copy that, Control C, paste it, and we'll transform that into place. So we'll perspective transform that into the top. We should get the stones lining up a bit because of the way we made our selection. Should come up with a nice result. We'll introduce brightness. We didn't do brightness to the top of the tile, but it had a very bright color to start with. So I'm going to add 30 brightness to the top of the wall edges, so that we have some shading value there. That's a little in addition. That should help the overall appearance. We'll double check on that. Everything looks in line. So now we'll select for the butt end of that. So we want to pull that over. Oh, that's wrong. Pull that over. Down 3 and down 1, because this is the end of the selection we made previously. Control copy, Control paste. We'll paste that into place. If we grab that in the center, we can sort of move it into the right range. And we'll just plop those into place. With that selection pattern, we should get some fairly reasonable line up on the rocks to make them look a little bit contiguous. So we'll transform that. We'll do the shading value. Whoops. It's not shadows, it's brightness and contrast. So that goes to -80 because that's the same as the value here. Okay. We'll flatten that. So anchor that layer. We won't flatten it. That'll put everything together. So that's our wall. We can export that into Godot. So we'll export that. We'll call it wall north. I think that's a north wall. Export. Export. Jump into Godot. Add a second tile map. Isometric cell has the same cell size, 256 by 128. That doesn't change with the size of the image. We'll go tile set. Pull the wall up. New single tile. I've configured this grid to be 64. That's just for ease of selecting it. We select the entire 256 by 256 image. And that'll give us a wall. Now, when it builds the wall, it's giving the appearance of building beneath what's highlighted. And the way that I look at that is when I build the floor underneath that wall, it highlights the top of the level. Now I'm building one level up, which is what is highlighted when I build one level up on top of the floor. Now I've seen people putting an offset to correct that and make it look like it's drawing on the tile to draw this section of wall. But I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, so I leave it this way. Now with the image that we used having such varying colors of rocks, we can see that introduces a repeating pattern, and that might not be to some people's liking. Now I'm satisfied with that result, but you may want to consider a less colorful rock pattern, something that's more geared to texture than color and this kind of rockiness, or making a few different walls. And I'll leave that up to individual choices. I'm just showing how to do it, not what artwork to use to do it. That's up to personal choice for you guys. So I hope this was helpful. In the next video, we'll come back and look at how to make the other walls and the corners. So until then, take care.